There are so many layers intertwined here that how does the average person even stand a chance?
They don't until they realize. And this is so, no matter how complicated this conversation might seem to somebody who's just dipping their toes into this world right now, this I think is the most important thing that I could tell anybody. You have everything that it takes to take your health and your diet and your food choices into your own hands. I mean, we are literally the only species on the planet that hires somebody else to tell us what to eat. And we are the sickest we've ever been despite that, or probably as a result of that. We have everything that we need. So this is I think the advice I would give anybody that is really starting to take a step into this world, because it is an important step. It is important for you, and it is important to everyone around you, because the choices that you make surrounding food impact every single part of your life. And the choices that you make now, you make them now, and you implement these smallest steps right now. Compound. They might seem small and insignificant, but day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, 5 years from now, 15 years from now, your life is going to be completely different than what it would be if you hadn't taken these steps. And even one step right now is monumental in those terms. Your senses are there to deliver messages of pleasure, deliver messages of pain and discomfort on purpose. They're not there by mistake. They're there as a result of millions of years of evolutionary pressures. And one of the most important things that we can do properly is nourish ourselves. And and eating is a sensual act. Right? All of your senses are firing when we are eating. When we do it right, it feels really, really good. When we do it bad, it feels really, really bad. And I think one of the hugest takeaways that I can suggest is, and this is very simple, if your goal every time that you get up from a table after eating is that you feel better than when you sat down at that table, a few minutes or a half an hour earlier, change your life. And that's what it should be. You should when we're eating, we're nourishing ourselves. Our senses, it doesn't make sense from an evolutionary perspective. And most of us think this way. I was born in 1973. I grew up in the 70s and the 80s where we had this idea that, oh my gosh, if we're going to get healthy, we have to somehow be in pain or in discomfort or be a martyr somehow. Like we have to feel hungry all the time if we're getting healthy. If we feel hungry, then that means it's working. Or if I have some kind of pain, it's not, that doesn't make sense. Like it doesn't make sense. If that was the case, we wouldn't be living right now because we wouldn't have made it through. Like it just doesn't make sense. You should get up every time you've eaten. You should get up and feel better than when you sat down. You should feel satiated. You should not feel hungry. You should not feel overly full, but you should feel satiated. You should feel comforted. You should feel good physically, emotionally, all of it. I mean, that's the way, and I don't want to, again, sugarcoat 3.5 million years of our past. That was how our ancestors ate. I have traveled the world. I have eaten with indigenous and traditional groups all over the place. That's how they continue to eat. They're happy. They're happy. They're content. They're satiated. They're nourished. They're full. So to get to that point, there's a couple things you need to do. Number one is you need to get back in tune with your senses and trust them. Right there, I spent so many years of my life with a piece of graph paper, a calculator, a muscle and fitness magazine, and a book that told me the caloric and protein and fat content of every single food. And I sat there and mapped out what I should eat based on all these different numbers and these calculations that I would make. And it was silly. I had everything I needed in my body. If I listened to when I was hungry, I ate. When I wasn't hungry, I stopped eating. But it's easier said than done, right? Because we've been forced to not trust our senses. We've been forced to listen to other people how we should eat. So number one is start to trust your senses. Number two, you can start to trust your senses when you understand how you feel after eating a nourished meal. So do everything you can. I don't care if that means you're cooking it, you're going to your friend's house, or you're finding the best place to get a fully nourishing meal. Go get a fully nourishing meal and then remember how you felt after you ate it. Remember how you felt when you slept that night, and remember how you felt when you woke up the next morning. And that should be your benchmark. And you should feel that way every day for the rest of your life. Then start to cook your food. And I know for some people, it's like, oh my God, I hear this guy, but my God, I'm working 3 different jobs and I got kids going to soccer practice and ballet. You can do it. And it doesn't need to be every single meal. But every time you learn how to cook something else in your family's diet, you then can push aside. You start to see through the nonsense. You don't have to. You become immune to the marketing. You become immune to the advertising. $1 trillion industry, food advertising, that no longer has an effect on you anymore because you understand what real food is. And even if you're not cooking all of your meals, once you understand how they can be made, then you can confidently read labels, and then you can confidently understand the food that you're looking at in the grocery store. And all of a sudden, 95% of what's in the grocery store isn't even considered food anymore. It's not even going to tempt you anymore because you're going to realize it's not food. It doesn't belong in that category. Those are the small steps, and they are completely achievable. I promise you, they're completely achievable. That said, to make things a little bit easier, here's a couple of very basic steps. This is the first thing that I would do, and you probably heard this from other people. I do think one of the biggest issues in our diets today are the nut and seed oils. So the first thing I would do is get rid of all the industrial nut and seed oils in your house. Period. Get rid of them. Go into your cupboard, get rid of them. Either throw them out. If you have an issue throwing out food, realize that if you define food as something that safely delivers you nourishment, then all of a sudden the stuff you're throwing out doesn't fall into that category any longer, and you're throwing something else out. If you still have a problem throwing it out, put it in the garage where it belongs, because it should be lubricating machinery. It shouldn't be going into our bodies. Number one, just get rid of that. As soon as you get rid of that, several things happen. Number one is you're gonna have to find something to replace it, which means you're cooking with butter or lard or tallow or schmaltz or ghee or something like that. So all of a sudden in your house when you're cooking, you've made this transformation. If then you start to pay attention to the food labels and what they're putting in restaurants into their food, then all of a sudden you're also going to take out a lot of other junk food, because almost all crap food in this country is built on industrial nut and seed oils. So just by doing that one thing, there's all these trickle down effect ramifications in your diet that's going to take a whole bunch of stuff out you shouldn't be consuming, and you're replacing it with high quality animal-based fats. The second thing is get rid of all refined sugar in your house and in anything else that you're eating. And same thing, when you start to do that, some of that other stuff that you might be buying at the store, if you're not eating refined sugar, it's out of your diet. That doesn't mean you can't eat anything sweet again. We have an entire restaurant that offers everything you could imagine without any refined sugars or fake sugars. We only use unrefined sweeteners in there. And those two things alone will make all the difference. And then the third step that I would take is to, and this is a very achievable step, take one step closer to where your food is coming from. And primarily I mean this with animals, but no matter what it is, one step closer. That means if right now you buy chicken breast from the store, buy a whole chicken. Like just take a whole chicken home. It's not that big of a deal. Everybody who's listening to this, parents brought a chicken home. I promise you. And if not, your grandparents definitely did. It's not a huge deal. You can learn all sorts of things just by taking a chicken apart in your kitchen. And you will save a lot of money, because price per pound for a whole chicken is a lot less than price per pound for a chicken breast. And maybe that's that step. And now I can afford that organic chicken, or that, what free range, whatever it is, chicken, because I'm buying the entire chicken. And instead of one meal, you have 3 meals with that one chicken. Or if you're already buying the whole chicken from the Acme or the other grocery store, go to the farmer's market and get the chicken there. Or if you're already at the farmer's market, then you know what? Go to the farm and bring your kids with you and actually meet the farmer and see the chickens running around to buy the meat there. One step is all that I'm asking, and it's a monumental step. Those few things will literally, implemented over several months, will transform everything about your diet.
Tying this, getting people started with the diversity piece from before, somebody who's going to take those principles you just shared in the foundation, and they're wondering, how many different types of animal products do I need? How many different types of plants? What's the simplest way you'd get somebody started? You mentioned the chicken piece there, but if they're thinking about, do I need to include pork, chicken, beef to get diverse nourishment? Because I think a lot of people, given the food pyramid and seeing all the different foods, feel like they need to eat a lot of different stuff to cover the basis. And this part of the conversation, what we're trying to do is give people what they need to get started that they can build off of. And then they can move into the nuance that we talked about before. But how do you look at for the beginner? And I know your focus is on animals. We know you're nose to tail. So include those pieces. Diversity of animals, including organs, but what they need diversity wise in the beginning.
Okay, that's a great point. So most of us, even though goat is the most widely consumed meat in the world, it's not really readily available for most of us in this country. In this country, most of us have access to beef, pork, chicken, and turkey. Um, we consume all of those. Although I got to tell you, I just don't like turkey that much. So we eat it at Thanksgiving, and we don't eat it much otherwise. But that's just a personal preference. Um, a, a lot of what you eat and what you should be focused on, to me, partially is dictated by your preferences and your taste, but also what you have access to, readily access to. So I would say if you have really good access to pig that is really high quality, and the beef you would have access to is just kind of run of the mill CAFO beef, then maybe that it's going to be a little bit higher in your diet than something else. I will tell you that there's a lot more research coming out now about the benefits of eating pork-based products than you'd be surprised at. 5 years ago when people were really pushing this beef, and I understand there's wonderful things about eating ruminants, not only um, from a nutritional perspective, but also from an ecological perspective as well, and what they do for the land. But I will tell you, there are a massive amount of traditional groups around the world that are focused their diets on pork, and they're doing very, very, very well. And I think this is one of those things that I was talking about earlier, that I think that research is going to come back around and show that these other animals have a lot to offer as well. I would say several things. Number one, um, introduce organs into your diet as much as you're comfortable with. And there's several ways to do that. And again, to me, now I started hunting when I was 8 with my father. I'm almost 52 now, and I've been hunting my entire life. I absolutely love everything about hunting except for the killing, and I never did. I love everything leading up to the kill. To me, the actual killing of the animal is a necessary part of that act. I never found any pleasure in that, but I found a lot of pleasure in everything leading up to it, and a massive amount of pleasure and responsibility in everything afterwards. Taking that animal and using the entire animal and nourishing my family, and doing all of those things. So if wild animals are something you have access to, I don't care if it's a fish or a deer or a duck, awesome, include that. But if not, there's a couple ways to start to get access to some of those other parts of the animal, and sort of dip your feet into this. Part of it is size, right? So bringing a chicken home is a lot easier than bringing half a pig home. There's nothing wrong with bringing half a pig home. In fact, I've been bringing half a pig home for many, many years into our house, and butchering it. And there's a lot of wonderful reasons to do that. But let's start with a chicken, for example. If you bring a whole chicken home, this is exactly what I would do. I'd take that entire chicken. I'd pull. Hopefully, it comes with, they've put in the gizzard and the liver and the heart, back into the chicken. You pull that back out with that little bag. And typically, the neck is in there as well. I take the liver and the heart and put it over to the side. And then in another spot, I put that neck. You take that chicken. The easiest thing to do is roast that chicken. Just roast the whole chicken. Put it spatchcock it. I don't care. Cut it up. Roast the entire chicken. Definitely eat the skin. And if you don't, to me, my favorite part of the chicken is the skin. But if you don't like that, do understand that skin is full of flavor, and it's full of collagen. It's full of nutrition. It's absolutely delicious. Find a way to incorporate it. So what we do is we roast a chicken, pull it off. I always eat the skin. The rest of the family doesn't like to eat the skin as just the skin, so I put it aside, the part that I don't eat. I'll carve it up real quick. We'll eat the meat. Whatever's left of that meat, we pull every bit of it off and we make chicken salad with it. You know what? That's the perfect time to take that skin, chop it up real fine, and throw it in with the chicken salad. It essentially disappears, but adds nutrition and flavor to it. Then all of a sudden now you have all these bones. So throw those bones into the pot and make bone broth with that. The next, do it overnight. The next morning you have all this amazing bone broth. So you have all the meat. Now you've eaten the meat. You have chicken salad out of the meat, and then all of a sudden you have all this bone broth as well. And then you have, and you throw the neck in with that carcass to make that bone broth. Now you have a heart, a gizzard, and a liver. That's typically what they would put in there. There's several things you can do with that. If you don't want to do anything with it right now, and specialty, throw that in when you make that bone broth, and then pull that out, and you can chop that up and eat it. You can do all sorts of things with it, but at the very least, it's added nutrition and flavor into that bone broth. It's better than throwing it out. What I like to do I love pate. I absolutely adore pate, but one chicken liver is not enough to make pate. You need a little bit more than that. So in my freezer, what I used to do is I would have a bag. I'd have a little bag, and I'd put, every time I get a liver from a chicken, I put it in the bag and freeze it until I got enough livers, and then I'd make pate. Chicken liver pate you can make in literally minutes, and it's not only delicious, but it's super easy to make. The recipe that I've made at home with my family is one of my favorite recipes in our book, so it's very easy to do. So all of a sudden now you have, at the minimum, you've taken the organs and put them in with the bone broth and increased not only the nutrition, but also the flavor of that bone broth. And then when it comes out of that bone broth, it's cooked. So you cut it up and eat it, cut it up and put it into something else. That's absolutely fine. Chicken hearts, my favorite thing to do with chicken hearts is to grill them. So same thing, I'd have a bag, I'd put all the chicken hearts in there. When I get enough to put them on a skewer, if I was cooking burgers or something else, I would put the chicken hearts right on the grill as well. The gizzard, which is a really, really tough muscle, is a little bit more difficult to deal with only because of the texture of it. So there's a couple things you can do with that. Again, at minimum, put it in for the bone broth. If you cut it thin, it's very easy to just eat right out of the stock pot when you made the bone broth. There's a couple things you can do with it as well. If you take that, same thing, I'd have a bag for all the gizzards until I got enough. You can actually corn them and make and slow cook them, and they make a wonderful corn gizzard. There's a lot of different things you can do with them. If you have access to the feet, always get the feet. The most amount of collagen are in the feet, and you always put the feet in the bone broth. In fact, every single pot of bone broth that we ever make, and I don't care what animal it is, we always put the feet in. If it's pork bone broth, put the feet in. If it's beef bone broth, put the feet in. And yes, you can buy beef feet. Put the feet into that. The other thing about, one quick little side note, what somebody told me years ago for bone broth, when I started making bone broth 20 something years ago, I always thought, well, you make chicken bone broth, and then you make beef bone broth, and then you make the venison bone broth. And, I have to wait till I had enough you can make bone broth with any of it. And what I found is you can make it delicious, put it all together, throw whatever bones you have in the same pot. If you have a pork bone over here, a beef bone over here, and a chicken carcass, throw it all in the same pot. And we make it here at the restaurant. We call it the farm. All the different parts go into the same pot. So all of a sudden you've taken one chicken. This is what you've accomplished by bringing that chicken home and doing this. Number one, you've been able to stretch your dollar a little bit further, because the price per pound of a whole chicken, because you're doing more of the processing at home, is less. So you've probably bought a higher quality chicken with the same amount of money. You brought this chicken home. You've eaten the meat as a family. The rest of the meat goes in a chicken salad for the next day. You've made bone broth with the carcass. You've either used or are saving the organs for some application into the future, and that's wonderful. But what you've also done is you've brought something into your house that resembled the shape of the animal when it was running around. Right? You didn't bring home chicken breasts in a sterile, styrofoam package with some plastic over the top, and the only way that you know it's chicken is because there's a label on there that says that it's chicken. You've actually brought into your house something that resembled the shape of the animal. You've brought bones into your house. You've brought skin into your house. And I will tell you that we are so disconnected from our food that our kids are not getting that connection in their head. That the fact that they're eating that chicken breast, and it actually was something that helped move a chicken around, days or weeks or months earlier, is something that they can't connect in their own head. but bringing that home, I think, makes a really big difference. The next step from that, look, if that is exciting to you or you've already done it, the next step is, look, go to the butcher and get a pork shoulder. Like, just get the shoulder, the front shoulder. All of a sudden with the front shoulder, you've got all the way from the hoof all the way up to the shoulder. You cannot mess it up. So first of all, you brought something home. Again, it's a little bit larger, a little bit bigger to deal with. Your price per pound, again, has gone down because you're doing the processing. The shoulder skin is the perfect skin to make pork rinds from. The meat that's on the shoulder is already the perfect percentage of approximately 80% meat to 20% fat, which almost every single sausage on the planet is an 80-20 blend of pork meat to pork fat. So if all you did was cut into that and you messed all of it up, but you got all these pieces and ran it through a meat grinder, you could make almost every sausage just with that. Then you have the scapula, you have the bones, and you have the foot to make bone broth. You have the skin to make pork rinds. With just that shoulder, I mean, there's a lot of other things you can obviously do with it too, but right there you have the basis for taking that next step in your cooking and connecting with where your food is coming.
If you enjoyed that clip, you're going to want to head over here and catch a full episode. I'll see you over there.
We are literally the only species on the planet that hires somebody else to tell us what to eat. And we are the sickest we've ever been, despite that, or probably as a result of that. If you are carnivore, if you are keto, if you are vegan, if you are vegetarian,